Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Christine Liggio from the Office of Alumni and Parent Engagement at Lemoyne College, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this week's webcast, which I hope will enlighten your mind and tempt your appetite. In today's webcast, titled Conversation and Cooking in the Time of COVID-19, we will be hearing from Matt Reed, Professor of Practice in the Department of Communication and Film Studies at Lemoyne College. He teaches classes in advertising, public relations, and creative advertising. In addition to his teaching at Lemoyne, Matt is also the co-creator and host of the online cooking show, Spatchcock Funk. And so today we're going to hear some of his insights and stories about working with students at Lemoyne, his days in advertising, and the brainchild behind his cooking show, while he shares some fun, fresh, hopefully easy to make recipes while we are sheltering at home. We will also share an ebook with the recipes of the dishes he is making today, so we'll be sure to send it along following the presentation. And if you have any questions, please send them through via the Q&A feature. And for any comments that you'd like to share with us or with fellow viewers, please use the chat feature for sending your messages along. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Matt Reed. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Matt. I'm going to hand things over to you.
Well, thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here. And I don't know about everybody else on this call, but for me personally, I am starving for human contact, right? It turns out I'm an animal that's not built for captivity, so I'm not doing well in cages. So before we get started too, and I tell you a little bit about where we're coming from and what we're gonna do, first of all, to our older brothers and sisters in faith who are observing Ramadan and everybody else, what's important is we understand where you're coming from. We scheduled this lunch thing, but you'll have the recipes for use afterwards. And also too, though, I'm glad that William likes the map of Ireland. My family is Irish American among a giant mix of other things. One of the things too, if you want, throw in the chat room. How's everybody doing? Let's do a check-in. Are we feeling okay? Are we at least physically okay and healthy right now during our COVID quarantine time? I know it's a tough time. One of the things that I've been learning from my students and other people is that, yeah, healthy but missing people, hanging in there. We're all gonna feel like that. Like we're feeling good. We've got more stuff, more cooking going on. Penny agreed, we're eating a lot more. It's pretty funny, doing well considering. That's true of all of us. We are doing well considering for most of us. But the problem is this human interaction that we're lacking. So what we wanna do, baking lots of sourdough bread, that's what you wanna do. In addition to that, you also wanna find ways to connect with your friends, with your family, somebody you haven't talked with in a while. Using Zoom conference is a great way. Sending text messages, sending handwritten letters in the mail has been really, really great. So I'm excited to be connected with you. I just saw Linda signed in. I saw my friend Leslie, a lot of people that are awesome. My man Doug, we were just talking yesterday. You're being gluten-free, Barbara. That's good to see too. So what we're doing is with the COVID situation, what I want to talk about first are two things. I'm going to kind of walk you through. There was a question beforehand about how I decided to become and why I became a professor. I'll give you a little bit of my background on what we do in the communications department and at Lemoyne in general. Because for me, Lemoyne is an interesting place. It's an important part of my life and how I define myself now. But actually, most of my friends, my sister, who's going to be making an appearance during the show because she's my trusted assistant today, a lot of my friends went to Lemoyne College. And growing up, they were always talking about the heights, the heights, the heights. And I would be like, man, listen, these people sound like a cult. It's a good little private college in Syracuse, New York with a really good moral fiber to it. But come on, it's not that big a deal. And then I started teaching there. And it is a surreal experience. The way that the students interact. I taught a class where I'd bring in guest professors that were all leaders in industry. My wife, who's actually in a conference call somewhere in this house right now, who's the head of Mower, the mayor, different people that were a part of that. Of the bigger community, they would do a favor, and I would say to them after every class, hey, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule. And every time they would say something like, no, thank you. Like this was such a great experience. And I had the pleasure of saying that to them. I feel that way every day because of my exposure to the chance to witness greatness and maybe be a chance to help push it forward. So without further ado, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go a little bit into what it is that we're about at Lemoyne, at least from my viewpoint, and from observing the great people that I work with. So usually what happens is before we come into class, when I start classes, I usually have a Spotify playlist playing. And that way the students can kind of relax a little bit, allows me to control the tone. but since we're going over Zoom, I couldn't do that. So to make up for that too, when we send over the recipe book, I'll be sending over a 4-hour Spotify playlist for you that has music that I've cultivated and curated from the students, because I actually have them make a lot of playlists to help set the vibe. And I'll share that with you. So we're going to talk about this. We checked in with each other a little bit. We're in scary times, but it's an opportunity for unification in a lot of ways, not just at a national level, though that's a big deal. As a school as well, and Lemoyne's done a really good job of that. I've been spending a lot of time with my students over the past few weeks, and we're going to talk about the concept of inclusiveness and why that's an important situation. A little bit about me, though, because if you're spending time here, I want to make sure that I show you some kind of level of expertise, and that I'm entrusted the students with that expertise. So these are some things that are from my social media feeds, and social media is the way that our students, but more importantly now, almost the entire world tends to connect. So the top left picture is one of the founders of Van Skateboards, and he was going to work, and I thought that was so cool. The next one is a duck omelet and lobster crab cake I made for my wife one day, which I felt really proud of it coming out, considering the amount of calories and alcohol I had ingested the night before. There's also blurred limes. I think that's a funny joke. A picture of a guitar I took late at night. One of my friends was playing, and it came out better than I expected. Edgar Allan Poe. So I'm a huge, just almost slave to creativity. When I see it, it makes me happy. And students and my coworkers. I'm a big Syracuse basketball fan, a Syracuse sports fan, and that's where I have my MBA from. I'm a fan of bravery and history, and those are some baby birds that I risk life and limb to take a photo of. My background, though, before I started teaching, was in advertising. I'm an agency guy by trade. So if you've ever seen the show, I started at Ogilvy and Mather in New York City. If you don't know that ad agency, it sounds like two British guys having tea, but in actuality, it's one of the bigger agencies in the world. I also spent time at Mower. I was the chief operating officer at Digital Hive and worked at different agencies. My role actually was, I worked in both the account service side and the creative side. And if you see the show Mad Men, the character Don Draper is actually similar to the role. He's actually a combination of roles. So he's a pitch man, and that was my role. And it's eerily similar to real life, except thankfully misogyny is no longer a part of the industry. Martini lunches only happen around 5% of the time. And I've only slept with one coworker, but it was my wife, so it's not as racy as the show. But that's my agency background. These are some of the clients I worked with from the agency side: Nationwide Insurance, IBM, Unilever, part of the Got Milk campaign. And this kind of led me into a couple things. So what happened was I wanted to become a chief operating officer at an ad agency at some point. But when I worked at Mower, Eric Mower was and still is the boss and principal. And he said, "You're going to go to Syracuse University and you're going to teach a class there because I promised them that someone would do it." And I was like, that doesn't sound like that's for me. He's like, "Well, that's funny because it's for you. Now get up there and do it." And I did. And it was transformative. Spending time with people that are engaged and passionate about the same things I am was eye-opening. And being able to, at Lemoyne, we can teach the whole person. I started to really explore that there, and I fell in love with teaching on the spot. It's also much better than advertising agency life, because when I'm telling people stuff in an agency room, everyone rolls their eyes. But if you're talking in a classroom, they take notes and pay attention. So maybe a little bit of an ego play came into that too. So while I became the COO of Digital Hive, they knew that I wanted to go into teaching. And this opportunity at Lemoyne, through my friend Dan Roche, came up quicker than expected after some conversations with Dr. Erlin and Jim Joseph that really got me excited about this great community. And of course, the aforementioned family and friends that I have. So while I was doing that, I decided to teach full time. I launched a independent marketing consulting firm, Creative Consulting. So, and this show, Spatchcock Funk, which I'll be talking about briefly. So right now, I teach full time, run this consulting firm, and I'm trying to get this cooking show off the ground with my partner. And we're having some good stuff. Today, we've launched new content. We have an in-depth interview with my friend Jeffrey Knaus, who's the CEO and co-founder of the Digital Hive. He's a great guy. The students really respond to him. Just to note, while this conversation will be PG-13 the entire time, some of the conversations that happen on Spatchcock Nation and Spatchcock Funk might include a curse or two, and I might rate them as not safe for work. So please listen to them. Please download, enjoy them. Please subscribe to YouTube, because that's what we're going for. But I want to be honest and sincere in our content, because we'll talk about storytelling, which is what this is all about. These are some of the clients that my consulting firm does some work with. We're doing some work with Sam Adams, which I'm really excited about. We're doing some work right now in terms of public relations for a lot of hospitals and health systems, which is has been rewarding and a little bit upsetting at times too, because of the crisis. But it's given us a reason to stay busy, and I hope that you're finding some of that too. So the thing is, though, is while I'm here talking the most, I come from a department of far more established and greater professors than me. My friend Julie Grossman just had a book published about Twin Peaks, and it's outstanding. Professor Cole was just a part of a Netflix documentary about who killed Malcolm X. Mike Streisguth has appeared in Rolling Stone, NPR. Professor Novak is this great film scholar. So these, just the logos that are on the screen right now, these are just some of the press and the places that have either had our faculty, students, or alumni contribute to, and that speaks to the idea of storytelling that we build. These are some of the brands, at least since I've been there, that some of our current students, now alumni, work for. Jordan is at IBM doing some great work. Nick is at Disney. These are places where students are doing real work in the field that they chose, and that's creating stories. It's building relationships with brands and users. So what we do before every class that I'm ever a part of is we identify goals. And right now, there's a big thing going on that's huge in the students' lives and some of your children's lives, most likely, depending on how old they are, is Travis Scott has partnered with the video game Fortnite and become a playable character that people can interact with. And what this was a combination of two stories, two worlds that different target audiences love. Travis Scott from the rap world, who my students wrongly think is the greatest living rapper, but that's because they don't give enough credence to people like my man Jay-Z or Nas. But anyways, I digress. Travis Scott is a very important cultural figure, and his willingness to join forces with Fortnite expanded the video game empire to a new audience, and vice versa. The rap fans into this new video game, and it's done nothing but make everybody happy, the users and the advertisers too. So what we're trying to do is the same thing. I'm trying to immerse in different cultures and talk about inclusiveness a little bit today. But on campus, the goal, we see our students first, like the child on the show, The Mandalorian, who's on the screen right now. And I just want to give him a hug because he's so super cute. It's this amazing, powerful young person that has gifts that haven't been explored yet. So when we meet them, they're like this, but their goal is to eventually be like this, the older version of Yoda, a mighty warrior, a teacher. But when we leave, hopefully, school, they are like Rey in the sense that they've developed some powers now. They have a sense of self, and they know how to apply social justice to all their great storytelling skills. And apply that, all the things that we teach in our department are transferable. They are portable from the communications department into their real lives. Building relationships with your family members, your loved ones, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your children, those skills are 100% transferable if they're done ethically to advertising, to creating films, to producing movies. So it's an important aspect of the things that we do here. So my goal today is to talk about creative storytelling briefly and what it means to our students and the community, and then we're gonna go through some recipes and talk about how recipes and food really plays a role in our lives. But storytelling, right? All of our students and all of you should feel as though you're the star of your own stories, and we want to help shape those stories because it's the whole person, right? We want people to apply the things that they've learned in philosophy and economics to the way that they deal with things in their daily lives with a sense of social justice and an ability to connect with people at a higher level. And that's what really happens on the campus. It's an amazing scenario because the thing is about happiness is I'm a big fan of American history. People that work with me in my department and my students probably hate how much I talk about it, but it's true, I am. And the thing is, in the Declaration of Independence and these great documents, they talk about guaranteeing a pursuit of happiness. And that's very true. We are guaranteed the chance to pursue happiness, but we aren't guaranteed happiness itself. The pursuit is what we're guaranteed. And our role at Lemoyne is to help guide that pursuit, whether that's finding a job, a craft, not a job, but a craft that you love, forming relationships between people that you love, the church, whatever, however you tend to worship, whatever, or worship not at all, but still live a good, moral, strong life. Happiness, the pursuit of it is what's important. And that's what we drive through the whole person. Yeah, there's career building and things like that. That's a very important aspect of it. But we want you to find a career that will make you happy, that will bring you joy, and have those skills that can transfer to other areas. So we're here to help in the pursuit of happiness. But it's about storytelling, right? This is how we define ourselves. And the thing that's funny to me is I was talking to a student yesterday. Her name is Amari, and she's launching a skincare line, and it's really cool. And she's made a lot of money. She's driving a lot of business, but more importantly, she's this person that you just want to be near. That energy that makes you feel better about yourself from being around her. And she was like, well, there's not really a story about me, which blew my mind because the story, she is the story. And that's the thing about life, about the people that we're with. No one ever said, I loved how boring that story was. Or no one ever said, oh my gosh, my friend Sam, you're going to love him. He's the most boring person ever. It's about how we define ourselves, right? And everybody has creativity. If you're able to pick out an outfit this morning without someone telling you how to do it, congratulations. You've got some creativity in you, some sense of style. Unless your mic strategy was probably Leslie helped him get dressed today, but I'm sure he looks good. So what happens though, what we try to do in advertising and storytelling and filmmaking, in public relations, is we try to elicit and create feelings at scale. When Maya Angelou talked about this, people don't remember what you did or said. They really don't, but they remember how you made them feel. But what you said and what you did is the way that you make them feel, right? So this is what we're talking about. And it gets into the idea of the cooking show. Where we started this was, to me, relationship building, like food and having drinks with someone, they often become the setting where you're trading stories or you're making stories sometimes. So what we decided was to create this show, and the show is called Spatchcock Funk. It's about storytelling, and really what we try to do is the tagline is dope food plus strong drinks equals great stories. Because what we do is we tell stories. We tell stories with food. We tell stories in our lives. So I'm going to move around here into the bar area a little bit and speak a little about the show itself. So the show is an online cooking show. It's on YouTube, and we'll typically make a food dish or a cocktail. And because of COVID, a lot of our users have been asking for more content. So we've started to create a podcast that's similar to PTI from ESPN. And what we do is we have the host and a guest, and we go through a series of different questions that all of them tie back to the idea of togetherness and unity and inclusion, right? For our show, one of our things that that says on our website is, it doesn't matter who you love. If you love someone, you're with us. And that's important, the idea of the sharing love. So the first thing we're going to share with you is a cocktail, because I'm in the mood for one. And what we want to do first is we're going to go into one that's a little bit lighter, but in the recipe book, there's about 15 recipes. We're only going to go through 4 of them today. The first one we're going to do is a margarita using a hard seltzer. We're going to use Truly from the Boston Beer Company here. We've been doing some work with them, and we love those guys, and we love this product. So people have asked about how to make a margarita using this. So what we do is you take a rocks glass and you ice it up pretty strongly. From there, you've got your shaker, and we are going to put 2 ounces of tequila, because the more tequila, the better, as my doctor would say. No, I'm just kidding, and I hope he's not on this show. So we're going to put about 2 ounces of tequila. Then we're going to put about an ounce, maybe an ounce and a half. Let's go an ounce and a half of some orange liqueur, which Cointreau we like quite a bit. This is found in every liquor store, but it's got a nice little taste to it. And the thing is now, what happens is, and we're also going to put about half to 3/4 of an ounce of lime juice. And we like to use key lime juice because key lime seems like it's a more baller and cooler version of limes. So we've got that in our mix. The Truly is going to replace simple syrup, so to lower the sugar intake totally for the drink. So this is actually a low calorie, low sugar margarita. So you can have 2 of them if you're following along at home. So once we've got this stuff in here, what we're going to do now is we are going to add our ice back to the shaker. We're going to shake it off like Taylor Swift, because I know there's a lot of Taylor Swift fans on here. Then what we're going to do is we're going to add that mix to our glass, and we're going to top it off with the hard seltzer. So now it's going to have a light feeling to it, but still give you the same strength and the same flavor that you get out of a margarita. My sister, who's in the background right now, hasn't seen this drink before yet, but she's giving me an approving thumbs up. So it's likely that I won't be the one finishing this drink today. But anyways, here's to you. This is a really good drink to make. And now my sister's going to bring up my little assistant. I shouldn't say little. Oh, I forgot. Garnish it with a slice of watermelon.
Matt, I just wanted to interrupt quickly, if you don't mind. Oh, a question came in from one of our viewers. She asked how much simple syrup, again, was in that recipe?
So no, we use no simple syrup. In this case, we used the Truly to replace the simple syrup, to replace the sugar aspect of it. And in the recipe book, what you typically would do would be, some people use 1 ounce to 2 ounces of simple syrup, and then it gets a little sweet. So great question, but we use that to replace it instead. So before I show you the next dish, this is my sister Carrie. She's a class of 03. And
CAS 13.
CAS 13, and she's rocking her colors today, green and gold. She survived a few Dolphy days. I'm not really sure about what Dolphy Day is, but they tell me it's something that goes on campus. I'm too busy educating and learning to know about that type of stuff. So Carrie's been helping us out today. So what we're going to do too is talk about somebody else and the idea of this inclusion and growth on our campus, especially in these hard times. This is a time where our community has come together. I've gotten emails from students that I know that are alumni that are doing different things, people that are on boards that are reaching out. It's been a great connection. And Dr. Lemura, Linda Lemura is just a person that when you're around her, you see her genuinely run up and hug students and they want to hug her. It's a real sense of inclusion. And when you hear her speak sometimes, she references her time growing up on the north side of Syracuse, or as people say in this area, North Side. But what she talks about is growing up in an Italian-American neighborhood. And the north side to me actually, I was talking to a student of mine named Yasmin, who's on here. We're talking about inclusion in terms of how things can change. But if community stays the same, then the community gets stronger with change, right? Because we want to change, like Jack Welch said, as my friends in the business school, Dr. Ryan, Dr. Erlin would tell you, that you want to change before you have to. And togetherness is what makes that happen. So most of the meals that we're going to make today are going to be tied to the north side of Syracuse. Because originally it was a place where Italian immigrants came to find their place here. And they kind of grouped together and eventually became friends with other immigrant groups and the other people that were here for a while, but that became a steadfast place for them. So we're going to start with that part, the older part of the north side, and we're going to move to the newer part of the north side. And so about how that leadership and the concept of togetherness has brought the community and keeps us together and is making us stronger through this time. So what we're going to make is actually a couple of Italian dishes. So we are going to make a Utica Greens steak sandwich. If you aren't familiar with Utica Greens, I feel very bad for you, but thankfully we're here to help you out. Utica Greens is an Italian dish made by Italian-American immigrants in Utica, New York, and now it's used on cooking shows in places across the country. And we made some here. It's a very meat-forward dish. It's actually the only way I like to eat salads, because typically salad is what my food eats. But what it is it's sauteed escarole. We have prosciutto in here. We have chopped red peppers, a little bit of chicken broth, a lot of cheese, some seasoned breadcrumbs. Then we also put in some mild Italian sausage. We also put in a half pound of bacon, because bacon's one of those things that, I mean, my doctor also agrees with this statement too. Bacon should be added to everything. Just kidding, they really don't. So we've got this, but it's a simple sandwich to make and it adds a lot of value. So the first thing we have is a soft sub roll. Make sure it's not broken in the back, because this sandwich is going to get pretty heavy. That we've toasted with a little bit of garlic and garlic butter that we made, but we didn't break it, and we still want the outside to be soft. So what we're going to do on one side is we are going to spoon up some of our Utica greens, and we're going to make a good layer of this across the sandwich. This way you don't need any lettuce, you don't need anything like that, because you've already got your greens in here. I mean, I think all 4 food groups are represented here, so really, this is the type of dish that you could eat 3 or 4 times a day. My sisters are proving that. The next thing we do too is we have a bunch of shaved ribeye steak. Now, I don't know if you can see this on here, but when you have shaved ribeye, what we do if you're making a steak sandwich or anytime you use this is we cook it till the outside is a little brown, but we still want to have a lot of that pink in there, because a ribeye, a medium rare steak is how it should be done. If you like your steak well done, you might need to see a doctor. No, just kidding. It takes all kinds to make the world go round. So we've got this stuff layered on here. The next thing that we're going to do is to give it a little bit more of some color and add some other things to it is we're going to put a couple of sliced tomatoes on here. And now we've got sliced tomatoes. We've got our ribeye piled pretty high. And we also made some homemade garlic mayonnaise because, you know, knowing how to make mayonnaise is actually a simple thing to do. But when you're at dinner parties and entertaining people, they're like, wait, you made mayonnaise yourself? You're like, yeah, I whipped together an egg and some oil and threw some vinegar in there. And now you think I'm Julia Childs. But it's very, very easy to make. Everything that's on this course today, the stuff that we're going to do, is easy to make. So what we have now is when it comes over that, you're going to have a bite that has both cold, hot, spicy, sweet, salty, all in one situation. And the garlic at the back end of it really helps finish it. It's a great thing to kind of roll. So I'm going to take a bite of this to make sure that I'm not giving you guys bad advice, because that would be dishonest of me. It's a success. So my assistant's going to take this plate now, and she's going to bring up the chips, actually. while she's doing that, I'm going to move this over here because I screwed up the plan. Now she's doing awesome, and I changed up our plan because, as my students will tell you, I might be a good storyteller, but I might not be the most organized person that's ever lived. My sister's nodding very approving to that statement. Thankfully, my
Matt,
students,
while you're getting ready for the
yeah,
next dish, I wanted to share a question that came in.
sure.
Liz asked, can we skip the Cointreau, or do you have something else as a substitute for that True Rita that you made?
Yeah, if you don't want to use that, if you don't want to use it for an alcohol content, then a splash of orange juice or something that might be like, you could even use Kool-Aid probably. We've experimented with that, but then you have the sugar play back in the mix, so that becomes an issue. Grand Marnier, someone mentioned on there. We love using Grand Marnier. We also actually sometimes have kind of bumped into the area that we call a cowgirl margarita, and a cowgirl margarita is something that will bring in a type of bourbon that will get you in a new direction. So I'm trying to see what I've got here, because cowgirls in the Old West apparently were really knowledgeable and strong bourbon drinkers. You can also use Drambuie. Isn't a bad little thing to add in there because it's got some sweetness to it. So it's really what the orange does is it gives it a sweet flavor, but you don't really need to have too much citrus because you're going to get a lot of that from the lime juice anyways. So does that answer that question?
Yep, that answers the question. Thanks, Matt.
Cool. So the next thing we've got here that goes with both of the sandwiches we're making today, the old part of the north side moving to where it is now, is also a bunch of German immigrants came to the north side, and there's a great restaurant there called Danzer's that did a really, really just bang up job. So what we did was we made some homemade potato chips, and these potato chips are easy to make. We've got the recipe in there, and we're pairing them actually with a beer cheese, and we used Sam Adams Boston Lager, but you can also use like a Syracuse IPA, like a Middle Ages Impaled Ale would be a good one, and it becomes a beer ketchup. I'm sorry, I said beer cheese. I meant beer ketchup. So what it comes down to is you have the salty sweetness of the potato that really goes well with the complex flavors of the sandwich. So to me, a good fry is great, but a fried chip, a really thick fried chip, is something that changes the complexity of a dish. It goes great with lobster rolls. It goes great with steak sandwiches. It really works. And it really crunches. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you the other sandwich. And as it comes around to this side of where I am over here, let me talk about the importance of where this came from. So over time, as my sister's here too, this kind of relates to her very much. The North Side is now still a haven for new Americans. And my sister teaches English as a second language. She's supporting our new countrymen and women right now. But what it is she's seen an influx of people from different areas, the Burmese, from the Sudan, from all over the place. And what we're going to talk about too is one of my students yesterday, Annie, was talking about, and she's a super bright rising star. And as we're talking, she mentioned that her parents own a restaurant called New Century, which is on the north side. It is a Vietnamese restaurant, and it is, if you have not been there, next time you're in Syracuse, go there. The pho is out of this world. Everything that they make there is made with true love and passion, right? And you see a melting pot of different people there. So what we're going to make is the banh mi, which is a traditional Vietnamese sandwich that has a French twist on it, at least the way we make it. But it originally was also kind of had a French influence on that. So we're going to make that sandwich, and I'm going to tell you a story about the first time that I had it before we get into it. The banh mi sandwich is a really different take. It's a combination of different flavors of different cultures. And like Annie's business she's trying to start, it's a business that she's launched that combines traditional Vietnamese values and style with people that are more curvy and aren't traditionally shaped. And it's not focused on just people that are Vietnamese or people that are just curvy, but rather including and sharing all these cultures, because a cultural appropriation, especially in the food and fashion industries, is an easy thing to do. And we try to avoid that quite a bit because it's terrible and awful. Instead of appropriation, it should be cultural appreciation. There's something wrong with making a dish from another culture if you're honoring it and doing right by it and using it for using your powers for good. So the first time I had this was actually this sandwich. When I moved back from New York City, I started working at Mower, where I met my lovely and talented wife. I met her before that, actually, now that I'm saying. Now my sister's looking at me. That timeline isn't accurate. I met her before I worked at Mower. But anyways, I'm working at Mower. And a friend of mine, who a really creative guy, who is mentoring a couple of students and interviewing a few for jobs right now. I think one of them might be on this call, so good luck. he goes on these food adventures, and we would go to like Taste of Africa and different places. So we went to this place and had a banh mi sandwich, and he's like, "You had a banh mi?" I'm like, "I've had like fake banh mi's." He goes, "No, this is a real banh mi. This is something that's going to be just crazy, and it's a banh mi, and it's on me." And I'm like, "Hey, great sandwich you're paying. Let's do it." So we go to this place, and it's a cafe that now has a different name on the north side. And we walked in there, and it was like the cantina scene in Star Wars. It was awesome. Like you walk in, there's music playing in the background. That's like a familiar music, but you've never heard it before. You know that vibe? And there's people over here playing cards, and the bartender looks up and sees us and sees my friend and recognizes him. So he's like, he waves over, and a woman comes out from the back, and she looks at him and she's like, "How many?" And he's like, "2." And she's like, "Oh, 2 real?" And he's like, "Yeah, 2 real ones," because he wanted them to be spicy and have all the ingredients on it. So we sat down, had tea, and talked to some people there. And it was a new experience, and that's what food is about, going to new restaurants, cooking, trying something in your backyard, trying a new cocktail with your friend. All of us over in our lives, many of us, at least many students, have spent time, when we were students anyways, has anybody here ever drank wine with your girlfriends and hugged them and like, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna love you forever"? That's awesome in those time frames because you're building relationships. But now during COVID, this is when you find out where these friends really are. And those are the ones that you're having Zoom calls with, or you're just texting them like, "I'm going to go for a walk and just want to call me so we can talk for a while." That's the power of relationship building, the power of food and alcohol and drinks. And even if you don't drink alcohol or eat different types of food, you have to drink some water and you have to eat some food. And all of us, this is a chance to bond and share. So the banh mi sandwich starts with a soft French baguette, a French roll, perfect for po' boy, stuff like that. This we do not toast. We want it to be soft. It still has a little bit of the crusty outside. We put a little bit of butter, the garlic butter on one side, because to me, as my mom told me, you got to put butter on everything. So that's what we do. Now, how this sandwich typically works is it's topped with a few things. So the first thing we're going to do on our butter side is we're going to put a layer of chicken pate. This is pate chicken liver. A really easy recipe to make, and it's really luxurious. It's another one of those things that if you make it, your friends are like, "Oh my God, you made pate?" And you say, "Yeah, I did. It took me 7 or 8 hours, but I did it because I love you." In reality, you can get it done in about 45 minutes. So the reason why we start with this is because this has some of the luxurious French influence onto the Vietnamese banh mi sandwich. But it also allows a creamy, sweet texture that adds to the way that the mouthfeel of it is. And again, it adds complexity to the different things we're doing, because it's a 2-protein sandwich. If you don't like this, I have a friend of mine, she uses peanut butter on it, which I do not recommend, but to each their own, because she loves it and she's a brilliant cook. So now we've got that part of it. The next protein that we use pork belly. This is pork belly. Pork belly is also something that can be easier to make, but it's delicious. If you don't know what pork belly is, imagine if bacon was the secret identity of a huge superhero. So that's what pork belly is. What we did was we cooked this pork belly with a little bit of Cajun seasoning. So we want some spice in there. And the French Creole, which is actually the area of expertise in cooking that I prefer to make, is Creole and Cajun. So now we've got a little bit of some spiciness and some meaty fattiness. Pork belly is, if you couldn't tell by the name belly, it's pretty fatty. So we've got the pork belly on here. But the other thing about this sandwich too, and the culture it represents, and the great melting pot of food itself, is it's a colorful sandwich. So what we do is we also have daikon, which is pickled radish. And the way that we make it, it ends up being bright yellow. So we have a layer of yellow on there. And this also has a little bit of sweet vinegar to it that we like, but it's not overpowering. So it's almost too mild, but it's a big traditional part of the sandwich. So we include that. What we also like to do is we include some pickled onions because they turn purple. And it's my sister's favorite color. It's a symbol of royalty. And also now you've got this onion flavor that comes into it, and a little bit more of the pickled flavor that adds again to the overall part of the sandwich. Then for some crunch and more color, we're adding orange. And all this is shredded fresh carrots. So we put this on top of things. And now we've got a beautiful kind of rainbow of colors that goes from a dark brown it goes from like a creamy brown to a dark reddish brown to a bright yellow to the purple and then the orange. But to top this all off too, we also made another type of homemade mayonnaise, which is really quite simple. It's mayonnaise that we added in cherry juice from Marciano cherries. We like Luxardo cherries. They don't sponsor our show. That'd be cool if they did, but they are the creme de la creme of cherries. If you drink bourbon Manhattans, anything like that, those are the cherries to get. So now we're gonna have that mayonnaise on here because now we've got a really decadent sweetness onto the top of the sandwich. So for me, there's other things you can do too. If you can't get pork belly, you can use pulled pork. You can use roast pork. If you don't want to use chicken pate, you try to want to have two proteins. So you can do roast pork or ground beef, and then have pulled pork on top of that, pulled chicken. A lot of different ways you can go. My wife doesn't eat any mammals, so we've made interesting like seafood variations of the banh mi, but we wanted to go the classic one because that's what I was going to do. So again, I want to make sure I'm not going to give you any bad direction or get anybody sick. So I'm going to take a bite and see how we did. So the thing about food, the concept of inclusion, of sharing stories, the idea of loving people no matter who they love, is an important aspect. And on the campus of Des Moines, you see this come together all the time. And what makes me so happy, especially in the classes that I get to be a part of, in the communications department, and the marketing department has some really cool projects that come out of that too, where you'll see students with different backgrounds, both culturally, but intellectually and creatively, they have different backgrounds. And when they partner together, you see some work that is award-winning. Our students won the Syracuse International Film Festival Award last year for the best student film. They made an amazing movie and they only had 48 hours to do it. That was the parameters for it. And it really made the movie important because the students understood that while you're the star of your own story, your goal is to make sure other people's stories are just as exciting and full of love as your own. But like the old saying goes, when you're on a plane and it says, you don't help others with your mask until you put yours on first, that's important. Our students are developing themselves as people, as leaders. Then they can determine what they want to do from a career standpoint. But what they're doing then is they're able to be way better servants to community and to people in general. So from cooking food and the things that we do, this is the life that we choose to live on the campus. The students, to the faculty, to the mighty people in the Jez residence, which I heard is like gilded in gold. I've only had the honor of being in there once. What we were surrounded with are people that are passionate about life and about making others' lives better. So that is what this is all about. And I'm so grateful that I've had this opportunity to talk to you guys. Make sure, if you can, take a look, go to spatchcockfunk.com is our website, but follow on YouTube. It's easy and free to subscribe on YouTube. We have new content coming. So what we'd love to do now is, I know we've got some time left here and I didn't want to burn everybody's hour up. So Christine, if you want to go through questions, we can do that for sure.
Sure. Thank you so much, Matt. And thanks so much for shining a light on all the great work that the students and the faculty are doing in the Communications and Film Studies department. It was so wonderful to hear about the Film Fest. So they're doing great work. I love hearing how you're developing the students to become, people form with others. It's just so wonderful, all this inclusivity and diversity. So just for a couple of questions that came in before our registration process, that I wanted to run by you is what inspires your recipes, especially during this time? I know that many of us right now are probably, drawn toward comfort foods and foods that are, or baked goods or carbs. So I was just wondering, what inspired your menu for today? And then also just, in general, what inspires your recipes?
Oh, that's a great question. So let's just start where the situation we are now. And so what inspired this was actually the idea of community development and being strong in the face of change. So that kind of was inspired by the area of the North Side. And I figured there's a way to tie that into Dr. Lemire based on some stuff the students were talking about. So that inspired the choices today. And then we're like, okay, what are some good traditional foods there? We actually wanted to make oxtail, but I had a hard time sourcing that. So that was some of the choices that really formed it today. So to get a little bit larger, so for COVID, a lot of us are going towards things that are comfort food based, which I understand. And the reason why we're going really though a lot of pastas is because at the beginning of this process, people started to be afraid that they'd be in for a long time, which they were right, we are, but they feared food shortages. So that's why we've stocked up on pasta. And pasta with the sugar that it metabolizes, once we start eating pasta, we keep eating it. So I think part of it is based out of necessity. What could we find in the store? And now I think some of that's going on too. So during COVID, I'm trying to eat healthier. I try to work out a lot every morning. I still do that because I eat and drink quite a bit. I have a show about eating and drinking. So in the meantime though, it's been really, what can you find? And then how can I be more creative? So for me, there's no one I really have to try to impress with the food, which is fun to do, to make things and make people feel good. But it's only my wife. So if I destroy something and make it terrible, she's there. So for me, I've been experimenting with all sorts of stuff that is not ready for prime time. At the greater level, though, the food that I tend to gravitate towards, that we do a lot of on the show, is an eclectic mix of different cultures. But probably the big base one is Cajun and Creole, because I spent a lot of time in New Orleans, and the food set up there is just unbelievable. So that's a big aspect of it. But then too, the more we make friends, like there's a episode that we were scheduled to get involved with, making some jerk chicken with a friend of ours that's from Jamaica and has a really cool Americanized jerk chicken recipe. So now it's become a blend of where are the best stories with that. So sometimes we'll choose a food that we'll use or a drink we'll make on the show based on a good story that we have. Like we haven't done a story about falling in love recently, or about someone fighting for equality recently, or so that kind of is how we kind of go through that. So we try to let a story kind of drive it when we're picking stuff for the show.
Great, thank you so much, Matt. So another question that we received in advance of this webinar comes to us from an alum, and he asked, what advice do you have for beginners who have a desire to improve their skills? He said that he can make a handful of dishes, but he really lacks the basic foundation that could be more readily applied across a wider menu. Do you have any advice? How did you get your start? Where did you start with cooking? And, what was your progression like?
Oh, I do have some good advice about that, and it's not going to be a secret. It's just one that it's a type of advice that nobody wants. Our students hate it, but it's true. It's you just keep failing and failing and failing. The more you do something, the better you get at it. We talk to our students a lot about something that the first time you start to do something, Professor Cole was once talking about, Malcolm Gladwell has a book about the outlier theory. Do something 10,000 times, you become an expert at it. You don't need to do it 10,000 times, but you think about the first time when you were a little kid, and the first time you rode a bike, and it was terrifying. The training wheels were on there. You kept looking back to make sure your mom wouldn't let go of the end of the bike, or look to make sure your dad's within eyesight. Or the first time you kiss somebody, it's terrifying, right? And now, hopefully, most of the people on this call know how to ride a bike and have mastered how to kiss someone. Those small skills, at the beginning, it becomes failure. So actually, many of the things that we make on the show, I almost burnt my house down. One of the first episodes we made was pig candy. It's basically how to make caramelized candy bacon on the grill. It is awesome. So while we were doing that, we were filming it, and all of a sudden my partner looked over and he goes, "Hey, dude, we got to pause." I'm like, "No, we're in the groove." And there's like billowing black smoke coming out of my kitchen because I had left the oven on and I had roasted basically caramelized sugar too fast. And other times, like my mom always tells a story about, I made this milkshake once. I love making milkshakes, and I put too much vanilla in it, and I wanted to be the most vanilla milkshake of all time. And it was so much vanilla that you would gag walking into the room. So what happens is, figure out something that you want to do. Watch videos, YouTube videos, not just our show. There's way better ones that have more detail and more depth to them. Watch a lot of those and keep trying. You'd be surprised, like some of the small things, talking about making like chicken liver pate, is not hard once you've learn how to use your food processor a few times. So try to do those things a bunch of times. So a good rule of thumb to start with is, if you're making dinner for your family, once a week, decide you're going to put aside an extra $10 or $15, if you can afford it, to one meal. Maybe it's your Sunday family meal or your Saturday meal, or wherever it may be that you're going to be together on things. And that is going to be your $10 to $15 to experiment with. So maybe it means you're going to buy a half pound of pork belly, or you're going to buy a new type of fish you haven't used before. And when you get it back, cut it into 3 different serving sizes and look up 3 different ways to cook it. And then you can experiment with that. And then also too, there's no pressure on it to be awesome. You've got 3 different things, and one of them usually will end up being useful. If you put a lot of butter on it, that'll also help a lot too. And then taste as you're cooking. That's my advice for someone starting out.
Great, thanks so much, Matt. And it's definitely so true. Practice, experimentation, watching cooking shows, all that really helps in honing one's craft. So for another question, and you probably touched upon this in the beginning, but if you can maybe expound upon it a little bit more, where did your love of food come from? Is it shared by your family?
Yeah, the love of food is totally shared by my family. And I should have expanded on that more. So when I was growing up, my mother, as a little boy, always would just make the best food, and to spend time with me while she would do that. And her and my father, both at different times, were going to school full time while my sister and I were younger. So they would, in order to just spend time with us while they come back from school and work and these things, we would just spend time in the kitchen. And I learned how to make all sorts of food from her. And my mother always treated food, which to me is something that is really special. Like if I'd be bringing friends, my sister or I might bring friends home from college that they hadn't met before, and my mother would treat it as though we were returning from Vietnam. There would be food as far as the eye could see, more than you could possibly eat, and you know that she was making like, oh, I hope they love this bite. So the way that my grandmother, my mother, my father, the way that they do different things, my dad loves it. He has a little smoker on his back porch. It's called the Little Chief, and my man spends more time with that than he does with his kids. And he built a house around it, right? That's how to match the color of his outdoor shower he has. This dude's a really awesome and interesting character. But anyways, yeah, family is the way that typically has been for me, but also the way that I've grown up with my friends, whether it's Professor Cole and I once went out to have a beer after classes because we want to talk about some different ideas we had for a potential class, or you know, you meet a friend of yours for lunch and to share creative ideas. It's a way to me that food, when I was raised growing up, is it's a way that we're sharing something together, and it lays the groundwork for sharing stories and sharing trust and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you, Matt. Definitely so true. And so kind of skipping back to when you mentioned making the pig candy and almost burning your house down, is there a dish that took you a while to master, but now you have it down pat?
Yeah, there's a few things I like to make that are pretty complex. So I make a pretty good like 6-wing jambalaya. I can also, when it's coming down to making souffles or things like that, I'm not a baker. Baking and cooking is very hard, very different, even though they're related. So to me, some of the more complex dishes like lobster thermidor, things that involve cream and blending of different spices are really, really big deal, like cheese fondue, those type of things. That took a while to master because the first ones were terrible and now they're pretty good. And what I've decided too is there's some things that can be somewhat simple but are intimidating at first. Like I can make a pretty mean chicken parm, but at first I didn't know how to do that until I screwed it up a few times. And then you go to restaurants like, I don't want to eat this because I can make a better version myself. To me, like seafood is something that I love to make. I like to make, really try to make complex seafood dishes. But if I can spin that answer a little bit, to me, everybody, if you're cooking, one of the things that you should know how to cook is fried chicken. Good fried chicken is, it's awesome because it's shared across all sorts of cultures. You can get good fried chicken around the world. But there's some love that goes into it when you make it. I always think about the movie The Help when Minnie's like, Minnie, don't burn chicken. And what she does in the end, right? Because she was so overcome with love by her friends. But anyways, she talks about it makes a biting into fried chicken makes the world feel right. It does. And that's something that actually, I took a bunch of times to get to the point where now my fried chicken, I will put it up against anybody. We do it overnight in a bath of like buttermilk, a little bit of pickle juice, some hot sauce, a lot of garlic, different spices, let it soak. And then we do basically double batter it. So when we fry it, it's got a double crunch, but it's super moist and juicy. So having your own take on a fried chicken recipe, that to me is like, if someone's like, oh, this person's a good cook. And so many of my friends are better cooks than I am. They own restaurants and stuff. But everybody were like, all right, how's their chicken? Even if they don't serve fried chicken on their menu, that's a good thing to have in the bag. And once you've got it down, it becomes something that is kind of intimidating and then becomes easier.
Great. Thank you, Matt. So we are getting close to 1 o'clock and closing of our webinar. Unfortunately, the hour really went quickly. I also wanted to ask you if you had any final thoughts or cooking tips or anything else that you would like to share with our viewers today.
So my only thing to share is just do yourself a favor, do all of us a favor. Email a friend that you haven't talked to in a while. Someone text message you haven't talked to in a while. And it can be something to make fun of them. I'm a New York Jets fan, and one of my friends sent me a note the other day. It was a text, and it said, the Philadelphia Eagles are the only team in the NFL that the Jets have not beaten. The Jets are the only team that not beat every team. And he was doing that to make fun of me, but the first thing was like, oh my gosh, but then they're thinking about me. So number one, connect with someone today that you have not connected with in a couple of weeks. Number two, from a cooking standpoint, keep trying and failing. You'll discover some really cool things out of that. And more importantly, keeping open-minded. And thank you for the alumni that support this school, that provide money back to the school. For all the people that are watching this that are business owners, that take interns, thank you for supporting this community. We're getting bigger and stronger, and we're grateful for all the support you do and for letting us be a part of this webinar series. Thank you so much. Go Fins.
Thanks so much, Matt. Some really great advice. Thank you. And thank you so much for joining us today. Also, big thank you to Carrie for making an appearance today. That was a great surprise. We loved having her on the Alumni Association board. We really miss her, so it was wonderful to see her. And thanks so much for sharing your time, your stories, and also your creativity with us. I love how you really have a unique spin on all of these recipes and drinks, of course. I'm really looking forward to trying some of these at home. And I'm a big fan of Utica Green, so I think I'm gonna start with that one, or I may have to start with that True Rita drink first. I also wanted to thank our viewers for tuning in today. As Matt mentioned, we will send a follow-up email with a link to the recording, as well as an ebook containing the recipes that he covered with us today as soon as we can. I also wanted to do another plug for his cooking show and just mention that you can visit it online at spatchcockfunk.com. And for more great stories, more drinks, and also some special guests. I know sometimes you have some great special guests that come on. So check it out, spatchcockfunk.com. Also, if you want to see more of these webinars, please visit us online at lemoyne.edu /alumni/webinar-series to see all of our upcoming webinars, our recordings of previous webcasts, and also registration information. And if you aren't already, please check out our Lemoyne Alumni Instagram account. We're highlighting stories of our alumni and students who are serving on the front lines during this pandemic. So if you know of someone who should be featured, please let us know by dropping us an email at alumni@lemoyne.edu. So on behalf of Lemoyne College, the alumni engagement team, I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today, for sharing your questions, and also a big thank you to you again, Matt, for joining us today and sharing all that wonderful information about Lemoyne students, what the Communications and Film Studies Department is doing, and all these great recipes. Thank you. So I hope everyone stays well and stays safe. Thank you.